Jax is without a doubt the most mysterious character in the Digital Circus. I'd say he's in the top 3, right alongside Kinger for having the most theories and conspiracies surrounding him. But while Kinger's mystery revolves around his hidden knowledge and wisdom, knowing things that haven't been revealed yet, with Jax, it's a different story. He is the mystery, and in this episode, even as he tried to hide his true feelings behind that cruel mask, there were several, and I mean several, moments where his facade began to crack, letting his true self peek through. However, we're not here to talk about Jax as a character in general. We're here to talk about his biggest secret, his past with the now abstracted Kaufmo and Ribbit. We don't know much about these two characters beyond a few mentions and scattered details, but after Jax's emotional outburst in episode 6, he told us something very important about them. This implies only one thing: Jax had something to do with their abstraction. Or perhaps he means that one of the abstracted characters was responsible for the other's abstraction. I know it sounds like a tongue twister, but let me explain. We'll go in the order these characters were introduced in the series, starting with the clown. What do we know about Kaufmo? Not much really, but the details we have are more than enough to give us some context. The first time we saw him was on a poster during the character introductions with a note saying he decided not to show up today. After the chaos of a new unannounced member suddenly appearing, the group decides it's a good idea for the newcomer, who from that moment on will be named Pomni, to meet the clown. However, one of the members, Kinger, suggests it's a bad idea, mentioning that the last time he spoke with Kaufmo, he wouldn't stop talking about an exit, completely losing his mind and isolating himself. Despite this, they decide to check on him anyway. When they arrive at his room, there's no answer. But the ever sly and stealthy Jax reveals that he has a key to every room, including Kaufmo, so getting in is no problem. The problem is what they see when the door opens. Scrawled on walls, paintings crossed out and reinterpreted, the word exit scattered everywhere, and other phrases like no way out, written in red next to a drawing of Cain chasing the clown. But the most disturbing figure is a black creature covered in eyes, which is presumed to be what Kaufmo has become, a mindless beast that only seeks to attack anything that moves. And just like that, we're introduced to abstraction. Of course, Cain shows up right after to fix everything and hide what was left of him in the cellar. In the next episode, everyone holds a funeral in his honor, to remember him so he's never forgotten. However, the cast only ever mentioned one thing about him: his jokes were terrible, and he apparently got angry when no one laughed at them. Minor detail, but it'll be important later on. Then there's Ribbit, who was confirmed to be the first to abstract even before Kaufmo. There's practically no information about them. We don't even know if they were male or female. But there's one crucial thing to know about Ribbit. They were apparently Jax's only friend from the beginning, and their abstraction scarred the rabbit forever. Every time Ribbit is mentioned or even alluded to, Jax's demeanor changes completely. He gets angry, goes into shock, or just falls silent with a haunted stare. This brings us to the moment Jax and Pomni have their falling out, after he reveals his true intentions toward her. Even though they had fun as a team and their partnership led them to victory, the rabbit would rather cut ties with her for good, making sure she sees him as a despicable person so she'll never trust or interact with him again. We know why. The abstraction of the other two, especially Ribbit, affected him deeply. But when Pomni lashes out asking if he's ever considered that his rotten personality might be the reason they abstracted, he just laughs with frustration and anger, and I quote, "Are you seriously gonna blame me for something that everybody else did too? You didn't even know him. You don't even know what people are like before they abstract. They are not pleasant to be around, like, at all." If we consider what Kinger said before Ragatha and the others went to visit Kaufmo, that he had gone completely mad, then Jax's words suggested before someone abstracts, they're warning signs. Their personality changes so drastically that just being around them becomes unbearable. And while Jax doesn't outright deny having a hand in someone's abstraction, he also says it was a group effort. If he's talking about everybody, that would also include someone who isn't with them anymore. Specifically, he would be including Kaufmo as one of the culprits. But a culprit for what? First off, just because Ragatha assumed Jax wanted to corrupt Pomni doesn't mean he did the same thing to Ribbit. The Jax we know now is not the same one these characters once knew. The old Jax most likely still held on to his human side, almost resembling his evil version, someone who genuinely cared for his only best friend. But when the tragedy struck, the pain was so immense that Jax abandoned what made him human, his emotions, and embraced a lie, a new life as a simple cartoon character, believing that's all he was, just as he told Pomni he used to be like her. "I thought we were at first. But now, there's nothing of that person left inside him, or at least that's the image he tries to project." Besides, Ragatha mentions having failed Jax when he needed her most. In other words, she couldn't do anything to stop him from becoming who he is now. But why? How did Ribbit abstract? We don't know for sure how it happened. The first symptoms could have been triggered by an argument between Jax and Ribbit during a critical moment, a bad day, a traumatic experience in one of Cain's adventures, or even emotional exhaustion leading to an existential crisis, trapped in a place like that for the rest of their days. But perhaps the one to blame for all of it was Kaufmo. If we look at Kaufmo's room, we see it's covered in graffiti. Yes, but if we ignore the present-day defacement and focus on the original decorations, specifically his paintings, we see that like Gangle, he enjoyed art, some rather disturbing and abstract art. Add to that the fact that, according to characters like Ragatha and Gangle, Kofmo's jokes weren't funny. This means that despite looking like a clown, Kofmo didn't really fit the archetype. He had a dark sense of humor that others found unpleasant, and in his desperate attempt to make people smile, he ended up bothering Ribbit at the worst possible time. He just wanted to make them smile, but the opposite happened. Because if we look closely when the camera focuses on Jax and the group, on the left side of the room we can see a painting with two figures. One of them looks like a clown with those large lips forming a sad face, and in the darkness of the painting we see an abstracted figure. Between the two of them, a single word is written. Why? This painting represents the day Kaufmo witnessed Ribbit's abstraction. Jax would have been shattered by the news, and from that day on, his personality changed forever, shifting from someone sensitive to someone cold and mocking, who supposedly loved to make others suffer just to push them away, a defense mechanism to keep anyone from getting close. After that incident, the relationship between Jax and Kaufmo would have changed drastically. Jax wouldn't just mock the clown, he would blame him for being the final nail in his friend's coffin. Now that friend lies in the darkness of a cellar, where the only light will be when another meets the same fate. From that moment on, filled with loss and the guilt of having caused a friend to abstract, Kaufmo would want to escape this nightmare to avoid ending up like Ribbit, a mindless, aggressive being. Desperate to find a way out, and desperate to stay mentally stable, but dealing with someone like Jax being a jerk to him out of resentment for directly or indirectly causing his best friend's abstraction, and with others not laughing at his jokes, it all drove him to madness, and eventually to his end. When Jax shows his true feelings and then snaps back into his persona, we always see him go from a look of melancholy or sadness back to a forced smile. But when Kaufmo's Jiro was mentioned, he just looked down, a sad expression on his face as he remembered the clown, before his expression turned to anger and he walked away. The same thing happens in this chapter. When he sees Kaufmo's door, he just grimaces in annoyance and looks away until his eyes land on Ribbit's door. And when that happens, Jax freezes in shock for a few seconds. Even if we go back to when Pomni asked if he was the one causing the abstractions, he exploded saying she didn't know him, Kaufmo, before he abstracted. This implies that remembering the clown leaves a bad taste in his mouth, regardless of whether it was his fault, Kaufmo's fault, or both of their faults that Ribbit abstracted by accident. But there's something interesting here. It's curious to think of this trope of abstracting others as a kind of domino effect. You see, when you line up dominoes and an external force knocks one over, it falls onto the next, creating a chain reaction that continues to the last one in line. In this case, if Ribbit abstracted because of Kaufmo and Kaufmo abstracted because of Jax, then Jax will abstract, but who will cause it? Well, considering he pushes everyone away and is already on the verge of losing his mind, he's going to abstract because of his own insecurities, his guilt, and above all, himself. He will be the one to end the domino effect.